CEPO, right?
Right.
So, okay, all right. So I think we're good now. Let me just make one check over on my page and see. Yeah, because it cut off. Okay, we were good. Okay, Terry Valor says we're good again. All right, cool.
Good.
Let me close Facebook in that tab. All right, so here we are, another episode of the Jeet Kune Do Dialogues. Mike Yuski, go ahead and reintroduce yourself. Everybody will remember you from a couple of weeks ago, and then we'll have Mr. Perez tell us his background and what have you.
My name is Mike Yuski. I'm originally from the DC area, and my instructor is Mike Kripka, who's an instructor on a Dan and Asante. So I'll keep the intro short.
Okay. All right. And Mr. Perez.
I am from Toledo, Ohio. My instructors are Sifu Dave and Simo Linda Hatch from Canton, Michigan. Instructors under Guru Dan and Asano.
All right, so now you got to explain that to me. How close is Toledo to Canton?
About an hour drive. Not that far.
Really?
Yeah.
See, that part of the world, you drive an hour in Florida, you're still in Florida.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Right?
Yeah.
If I drive an hour from South Miami, I end up in Palm Beach. That's it.
Yeah.
Nice.
You drive 8 hours until you get to Orlando, right? I mean, you can drive all day and you're still in Florida.
Orlando is 3 hours, and I don't drive more than 10 minutes. So, I'm doing a workshop for one of my students in Inverness in Central Florida, and I'm flying. All right. I am not driving. And actually, I've infected a couple of my students with that, because a lot of them are looking at flying now. It's only $58 if you book it early enough. Yeah.
Early enough, yeah.
Yeah. So American and Southwest, they really take care of us doing the Florida commute. All right. So, Mr. Perez, from what I have seen of you, you're a fairly volatile individual. Can you tell us why that is?
I wouldn't say volatile. I would like to maybe explain it as passionate. Yeah. Let's go with that word.
All right. Yeah. Okay. We'll go with that. All right. And is that just built-in Hispanic culture?
I think so. Hispanic, Irish, yeah, half and half.
Okay. All right. Well, that makes sense. All right. So what drew you guys to Jeet Kune Do ultimately? Because nobody ever starts out in Jeet Kune Do. Everybody has something before that, and then they end up. So, Mr. Perez, you go first.
Well, years ago, I was about 18. I started studying. I got into karate, Shorin-ryu, Okinawan Shorin-ryu. And there's just something about it that just didn't sit well with me. It didn't seem street oriented enough, real world oriented enough. Mm-hmm. And 2 years into it, it was all right. But like I said, I just wasn't happy with the training that I was getting, the development. It was on that time that Dragon, the Bruce Lee story, came out. And as good as a movie as it was, I know how. Yeah. It wasn't as correct, as factual as I like to think it was.
That movie.
Yeah. But the one thing that I got from it was how much of a, other than the fact that he was an actor, how much of a great martial artist he was.
Okay.
I see that he wrote this book, and that's how I discovered the Tao. Went out and bought it and just digested everything in it. I read it from cover to cover probably 10 times over when I first got it.
Hey, is that why you're so skilled at quoting from it?
Not as skilled as others, but
okay.
Yeah. But it spoke so much to me about freedom, about not limiting yourself, which is exactly what I was looking for. Efficiency. Efficiency is anything that scores. Just simplicity. And that's exactly what I was looking for. Adaptability, which what I wasn't getting in the art that I was studying. We had to adhere to this strict structured traditionalism. And I wanted to.
Okay, but now here's the thing. But how did you know that you weren't getting that stuff in Shorin-ryu? In other words, right? Because what you're talking about for a lot of us comes out of being inculcated somewhat, right, with Jeet Kune Do. So how did you know beforehand to be looking for that stuff?
Just certain techniques that we were learning that I would think to myself, well, what if they don't approach me this way? What if I'm not fighting someone who's coming from a karateka, a Shorinru style, So it's just, what if somebody throws a haymaker, or they're just coming from, just street fighting? How do I defend against that? I can't use this kind of a block that way. I can't defend myself this way. So I wanted to learn something that was a little more street oriented, something that was adaptable to the street, not
Yusuke. I hate to interrupt you, but Yusuke, isn't he talking then about the fact that so Dragon Bruce Lee story is what, a 93 film or something? What year? Do you remember?
Ballpark. Yeah, I don't know exactly, but definitely in that range.
So that's 20 years
after the Van Damme, Van Damme films, right?
So that's 20 years after Bruce Lee passed away. So
Yes.
isn't what Perez is talking about then the evolution of the public's perception of martial art outside of Bruce Lee? It's just that people themselves
right around that time, the U.S. saw the UFC too.
Yeah.
Right around that time, we saw the first UFC. Well, we saw Hoist with the original UFC one, where it was really styles against styles. So that's a great point. Right around that time.
Yeah.
I want to let you finish before I start off.
So it's it took off from there. But the great thing about it was it helped me to open my eyes to other things too. It wasn't just martial arts; it was music, weightlifting. There was a gentleman, John Little, who was given freedom to go through all of Bruce Lee's notes from his estate, and it was from him that I actually discovered the weightlifting program that I do now, that I've been doing for the past 20 years, power factor and max contraction training. And the funny thing is he came up with that from Bruce Lee's weightlifting, his weight training. A lot of his exercises were done in the strongest range of motion, because he understood that that's where the power came from, those last few inches of the technique. So he thought, well, why don't I devise a program that revolves around working out in your strongest range of motion? And it really cut down a lot of my workout time, gave me more time to devote to studying martial arts, because I wasn't in the gym as much, because you're working out a lot harder. So you got to give your body more time to recover between workouts. It was just amazing, how it opened my eyes to so many different things.
All right. So did you go into Yellow Pages and look for Jeet Kune Do near me?
I tried, but I think the closest place that I found was maybe Dayton.
Okay.
It was just a bit of a far drive for me. So I really didn't get into training with someone until about 7 years ago. Crazy enough, I did everything I could, bought every book I could, digested everything as much as I could. But it wasn't until about 7 years ago I found out about Guru Dan seminars. So the whole point of me going to the seminar was just to meet Guru Dan and just say thank you for being such an inspiration and motivation to my training over the years.
Right.
Lo and behold, I run into my instructors. I contact them on Facebook and tell them, look, I want to get into this. I'll do whatever I have to, whatever it takes. Tell me what I need. Had me over to their house for an interview, and here we are.
They go everywhere. I've seen them in Virginia, Pennsylvania.
Oh yeah, they are
the Hatches
great.
travel everywhere. Yeah.
Yes, they are amazing.
They really do. They travel everywhere.
And it's they didn't just start doing that either, because I've known them since probably 84, definitely 87 and 88, because Dave has Sifu Dave has some video of me that I've asked him to never release, because I'm just I look like some kind of alien creature, man. I'm so skinny and my limbs are like from here to yesterday. I'm like, please don't ever show that stuff in public.
Nice.
Right. But yeah. So okay, so that's all right. So Yusuke, refresh everybody on your journey.
So this is a great question. So when I was in Taekwondo, this goes back to the trembling shock era. And if you watch Olympic Taekwondo today, it's all lead leg tapping because what they did is they put the electronic sensors in the headgear and the chest gear. So you don't have to hit hard at all. And as we've been talking about in some of the recent posts, the way the rules will change the game, the way the rules will change. Like, for example, in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you can't jump into the full guard. You have to jump into the half guard. So a ton of half guard techniques develop out of there. Well, in Taekwondo, you can see the functionality sort of go away in recent times. When I was in the trembling shock era, I was going around to different schools to try to figure out, let me try to get to the Olympics. Let me try to find someone who can really teach us how to do the sparring thing. I was good at forms. I was winning tournaments, gold medals in forms, and we were losing. Everybody in my school was losing in the tournament and fighting. And we were medaling in the forms. And you'd see local newspaper articles writing it up as if we took the whole tournament. We won all these medals.
Yeah.
This is a lie. So I was going from school to school in the Montgomery County, Maryland area, trying to find better instructors to really show the drilling and the sparring. Really, it's the methodology of training. So I knew I wasn't good because I could kick the bag, I could kick the pads. I looked great. I was on the demo team. I could show you all the fancy spins. Mm-hmm. I couldn't hit anything when I was sparring, and I was getting my ass kicked. And I was losing when I'd go to tournaments, like really badly. Like I was like this mystifying how the guys kick him in the head. It's ridiculous. So I went to University of Delaware, and there was a guy there who was running the school who had battled brain cancer and defeated it through meditation, all this stuff. I was like, this looks like a good fit. So he wasn't in the WTF, which is the World Taekwondo Federation. Okay, fine. So I was wearing the red belt, and he said, well, you're not really a red belt because you're not in our federation. I said, I don't care, I wear a white belt. So I'm wearing a white belt, and I'm beating all of his black belts in sparring. Now remember, this isn't me trying to pat myself on the back. I wasn't good. I knew I wasn't good. It's just that they weren't as good as I was. So then he said, well, you're not a white belt because you're beating my black belt, so you can't wear a white belt. This guy even made a point to bring me up in front of the class and spar with me. And he would showboat, like he was like, showing the rich hand, like he's like, which is basically the hook in Taekwondo. I'm going to hit you with the rich hand, and I'd crowd him and not let him. I mean, I wasn't good, but even this guy was having trouble sparring with me. So I was like, something's wrong because I'm not that good. His ego's getting in the way, and we're not really getting into it. So I had a back injury, which really led me into the same kind of direction that Mike was just talking about, where you're reading about Bruce Lee, you're reading the Tao, reading the Bruce Lee's fighting methods, you're reading about his history. We had a back injury. I was going to a chiropractor when I was at the University of Delaware. Incidentally, their mascot is a fighting blue hen. So I thought it'd be pretty cool if they put like a blue hen in a Taekwondo uniform. So with this background of actually having the humility of knowing I am not good, I can show it and kick well, and the forms look good. Mm-hmm. I cannot fight, and I knew that honestly. I had to look for something else. And so the methodology was so important. When I got into the Jeet Kune Do with Mike Krivka, and we were doing various forms of boxing, kickboxing, you go through Thai boxing, Bondo, Panatukan, whatever it is. The methodology is really there, regardless of what art you're in, And that was more important, how you translated the focus mitts to the sparring and the sort of making the variables a little more fluid, and some of the stuff where you're just jab sparring and all of that. The methodology was so important. So the real thing was how I was in Taekwondo, and I was really, I was one of the guys that the instructors would say, you have to teach the classes. So this is ridiculous. I know I'm not that good. I knew I wasn't good because I couldn't win in sparring. That's where the rubber meets the road.
Right.
And then to try and find some methodology where they could actually bridge the gap between the techniques and the tools and actually being able to apply them.
Okay.
That's really what it was.
So you just mentioned kickboxing, and one of the recent Facebook discussions was about that very topic.
Yes, it was.
Where Ben asked if somebody could tell him what is Junfan
kickboxing.
Right.
Yes,
okay.
Sir.
All right. So Michael, what do you remember? What your reply was?
Mine?
Me?
Yeah. No, you're Mike Yuski. He's
Okay.
Michael.
Gotcha. Roger that. Only my grandmother called me Michael, so that works.
Oh, honestly, I don't. I've commented so much on stuff lately; it's ridiculous. So you'll have to refresh my memory.
Oh, I don't remember what
I don't.
Okay. Well, see, well, maybe you need to lay off commenting so much.
I think so.
If you're not going to be, you know, because like sometimes, but you know what the problem? One of the problems is when Facebook did this thing where now you can put up your post in the form of a question, right? I don't really need everybody's opinion on anything that I put up, you know, right? I mean, so if I do form it as a question, it's because I really do want feedback. But sometimes I just put stuff up because, well, okay, I find this interesting. I'm going to put it out. If you find it is interesting, cool. If you don't, cool. So if somebody comments on it, I don't feel the urge to reply to their comment. The world's not, you know, I'm too busy.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. 100%.
Okay. But so I'll tell you what my reply was, and maybe that'll jog your memory, Perez. Right? I said that for some people, since you know we were taught in the old days the 4 ranges of combat: kicking, punching, trapping, grappling, right? And then there was the dispute over that, and so that became the aspects of combat or whatever.
Right.
Well,
versus long, medium, and short or whatever.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
So the way I theorize that is that kicking and punching. Okay, well, why did kicking and punching come first? I'm making this all up for my students. Kicking and punching come first because everybody is familiar with kicking and punching. People are less familiar with trapping and grappling. So when we start training, we start people with that with which they are familiar. So when you put kicking and punching together, that is a kickboxing method.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Okay. So now, so to introduce that as, let's call it elementary to Jeet Kune Do, we call it Junfan kickboxing. It's the kicking and punching techniques, let's say conglomeration of Lee Junfan. So you call that Junfan kickboxing. But I made sure in the post to say, now I don't tell anybody that this is Jeet Kune Do. And somebody else used the term, not precursor, carrier. Somebody else in the post and said that that Junfan kickboxing can be considered a carrier system for Jeet Kune Do, which was interesting because can you remember the first time you heard the term carrier system?
I can't. No.
And I think the analogy that I think I've heard something, maybe it was a story that was sort of recalled to me by one of the instructors, maybe Mike Krivka, or maybe I heard it in a Guru Dan seminar, that Junfan kickboxing was more of Bruce Lee's personal expression of kickboxing, where and once you know, remember the analogy where you use the boat to get to the island, but once you get to the island, you can abandon the boat.
Yeah.
You know, so there were certain things we needed to learn first. Like, for example, we needed to learn all of the techniques that was in Bruce Lee's system, whatever name we're calling it, right? We can all agree there's a curriculum there, and this is where the disputes come in, where we shouldn't be adding things to it or whatever. And so you learn what's in the system, which is the boat to get you to the island. But once you know all of those things and you get into the mastery, that's when you're on the island and you can kind of do whatever you want. And I remember training with Mike Krivka where he was saying, well, the Junfan kickboxing is sort of the collection of these things that you're seeing in the seminar, which isn't the whole thing. We're just seeing whatever Guru Dan teaches us in the seminar. The jab exchange and the jab series, the 1-2 series, the 1-3 series, and it goes into some of the trapping where you go into like the ABC to HIA, all of those acronyms that one flows to the other. So it seems like like you were just saying, the kicking and the punching may be the Junfan kickboxing, where the entire thing may be Jeet Kune Do, and this may be semantics, right? This may be the different curriculums and stuff like that, you know?
Right. Yeah. So the place where I first heard carrier system was in Pencak Silat. Yes. That Bukti
Really?
Negara. Yes. Bukti Negara was a carrier system for Sarat.
Interesting.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Right.
Interesting.
Now I bring that up because Mr. Perez, you are well versed in the Mafalindo Silat, is it, through Sifu Dave and Simo Linda?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we
sense.
quite a few different variations there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, because I remember they were they brought the late Pendekar Herman Suwanda out to Michigan, didn't they? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then after he passed away, what's his Rita Suwanda? Did she
Rita
come
Suwanda.
out also? Right? Yeah.
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 That was all before me, though.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
Well, the reason why I think is because of that infamous picture of the ankle lock.
yeah. And there was actually a
Isn't it
conversation in one of the postings about that, about
Yes.
ankle locks. Yeah.
Yes.
If we remember correctly.
Wasn't
yeah.
it true that Herman Suwana's parents sent all the kids out to learn different forms of silat, and they kind of put everything together as well? Or am I getting that incorrect? Someone in that family, like all the kids went out and learned different styles and put a lot, not everything, but put a lot of different silat stuff together.
That sounds somewhat familiar because if I remember correctly, Mande Muda was an amalgamation of like 19 different systems or something.
Mm-hmm.
Similar to what
like that.
Edgar Suliti did with various Filipino martial arts, right? With Lamenko Eskrima was a combination of a few different things as well.
Yeah, I think so. The thing that I remember most about Edgar Sulita is he had a real knack for organizing his material. And that was something I appreciated because.
And Mike Krivka helped him do that. That's why I was familiar with that. Mike Krivka
really?
was one of the guys who really helped him put that system together. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Huh. So something good does come out of that Virginia, Maryland area, huh?
Right. Right.
Except
for bad drivers.
Right. Bad drivers and being stuck on I-95 for 24 hours. What is up with that?
That was an embarrassment. That was an embarrassment.
Come on.
In 3 or 4 inches of snow. Well, they may have had more than 3 or 4 inches, but still, that was definitely a failure of local government.
Yeah. Yeah. So listen, guys, give me your best answer to this. Why is there so much the back and forth in this Jeet Kune Do thing? Why?
I think for me, it's a lot of the people try to take away from the accomplishments of Guru Dan, or anybody that I hold in high esteem. People that seem to stand on the shoulders of these giants and then want to say these things to basically just help promote themselves while they're cutting down these same people who they've learned from and just take away from their accomplishments.
Yeah.
It bothers you a bit. And I know Guru doesn't care about that stuff. He just lets it roll off his shoulders. But for those of us who hold him in such high esteem, it's hard for us to just kind of let it go when we see these little digs that just happen. Those little condescending remarks that certain people make. But it's just hard to let it go by.
Yeah. Yusuke, why do you think?
So I definitely think that in one sense we have what Bruce Lee did while he was alive, right? Mm-hmm. And I think once he passed away, what he did when he was alive is sort of solidified or bookended, right? From whatever the earliest period of his life was, whether it's the early boxing that he had in high school or whatever, until the point he died in 73, it's bookended right there. Everything else after that is open to opinion. I also know that in seminar, I've heard Guru Dan say, as we know the triangle comes up a lot, art, sport, and science. In the martial arts, we have art, sport, and science, 3 different areas, right? we know what the sport is. The science is the stuff that's going to work on the street. And the art is the cultural, the historic stuff. And it might not actually work that well on the street. You might have to convert it back to science to make the art stuff work. The dance stuff, right? The I believe Pencak is dance and Silat is fight. So the Pencak, right? The capoeira was completely hidden as a dance. So a lot of the traditional Chinese martial arts, like wushu, that you see with the fancy swords and the jumping and the butterfly kicks, that's the art side of it. All the kata, it's all the art side. I think that I've heard Guru Dan say in seminar, he actually likes teaching the art. He likes it. So I think there's a few things going on. We try to take all of the different philosophies that Bruce Lee talks about, and some of them seem to conflict in a sense. When you talk about simplicity, when you talk about using what's useful, but if you look at the Chinese that's around the actual arrows, it's using no way as the way, using no limitation as the limitation, right? So once Bruce Lee passed away, and this is more of my own opinion and my own experience from being in the arts since I've been training since 1997.
Wait, we lost your mic a little bit.
It seems. Oh, can you still hear me?
There it goes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So it seems as though once Bruce Lee died, and people were taking the various aspects of Bruce's philosophy, because as a philosopher, as we talked about in our previous dialogue when it was just you and I, Sifu Dwight, philosophers will never stop philosophizing. So there's aspects of his philosophy that might contradict in a sense. Simplicity might not really go with using no way as a way and no limitation as a limitation. But the characters around those arrows are an absolute argument for cross-training. But simplicity may not be. And what Bruce Lee did while he was alive, we know, started and stopped, right? So these things aren't always so easy to marry together, right? And some people who take using no way as a way and no limitation as a limitation, or people saying, well, you don't need to go outside of one art. Maybe you don't, right? Because if it really comes down to sparring and you can pull off what you can pull off in sparring, then maybe someone can find the truth in only what they have right now. And it becomes a personal development question, right? Like I've studied Chinese, I've studied 40 different styles. You don't have to do all of that, right? We've talked about this before. So in someone's own personal pursuit, they may not need that same path that these other people need. But that's the using no way as the way and no limitation as the limitation. Maybe someone just says, for me, I'm not going to do all the stuff that you're doing. I don't care about it. I don't have the energy and the time. I'm just going to do what Bruce Lee did until 73 because you can find all the answers there. And they could find the answers there. But that doesn't mean that the other philosophies necessarily create a contradiction there.
Right.
I think you can explore different things. It may take more time. You may have to be more astute and more strict, and you have to differentiate between the styles. We have to be more academic about it to know the terminology and say, no, we're not adding to Jeet Kune Do. We're now in Silat. We're now in Muay Thai. We're now in Filipino martial arts. That's not Jeet Kune Do. It's different styles. So I also think, just to make one last point, when people start talking about their own personal expression, it's not really Bruce Lee's Jeet Kune Do. They're saying, well, I like this food and I like these movies and I like to dance this way and I prefer to live this kind of lifestyle. And when I train martial arts, I find it fun and fulfilling to train in this combination. And I'm going to call that my personal expression. That doesn't mean it's Jeet Kune Do. So we get lost between all of these things, the philosophy, the martial art, talking about various aspects of Bruce's art, and following what different instructors, the path that different instructors carved. So it's a long explanation, but that's the one I'm going with.
Well, I'm gonna pull a Mick Tully here, right? Yeah, because you talked about
what
movies,
we're here for.
You talked about movies and music and what have you, right? So Mick said the other day, he goes, "Yeah, I don't listen to any music past 1972." Right? So think about that, right? So yeah, so somebody goes, yeah, I really love film, but I don't watch any movies that were made after 1972. Because as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to film, especially Hong Kong film, the greatest Hong Kong film actor of all times passed his last movie, right? He passed away in 73. And so I don't watch it, but I really love Hong Kong film. I really appreciate it, but I don't go past 73. So if you do that in any of the sphere of human endeavor, do people look at you and go, yeah, that really makes sense?
Right.
Well, not really. Like if I'm introducing my mom to something, she wants her horizons narrow, right? I have to watch her stuff, but she doesn't want to watch my stuff, right? I watch everybody's stuff, but they don't want to watch everything, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I can get on the level with my mom with some historic stuff, and we might watch something on, you know, the public broadcasting or watching Downton Abbey, but she's not going to watch Mad Max Fury Road, or she's not going to watch The Witcher, or she's not going to watch, you know, some other, we call it crashing and banging. There's too much violence in it, right? So it's not for everybody. But the thing is, within that limited time frame, they may still be able to say, like, for example, I can't say to someone who's only watched film, we're going to use the film example or music example, and someone only watches films, you know, from 60 up to 72. But I can't say to them, well, the film I just saw, you don't understand film unless you see this film. That might not be an accurate description. They might really understand film. They just don't want to watch stuff outside of that narrow scope. And they still might be able to find the truth and be able to hang with film critics and commentary and various other, you know, expansions of the ideas and the philosophy that's in there. It's not accurate for me to say, well, you don't know about film unless you watch the stuff that came out in the last couple of years, because that's the best stuff. That might not be accurate.
Right.
You know, but maybe I feel more fulfilled by having a broader scope, but I also have to use much more time and everything else. So,
but that's the thing I was talking about. See, so like you just said, there is no need to tell that person that to give your opinion on that person's approach. There's no need. If somebody says, I really love film, but I watch 60 to 72, it's like, oh, okay. Right. If you tell me you really love it, I believe you really love it. And if you tell me you only stick to 60 or 72, then I figure you're happy with that. I don't have to tell you anything about The Witcher, which, by the way, I cannot understand. I have to sit down one day and try to understand that bloody series. I
just started it last night. I'm only in the second episode, and I'm just as lost too.
Yeah.
I played the game.
All this bouncing around.
Yeah.
I played the game. But I know about the books, which helped me understand it. So I had a leg up.
It's that old canard. It's the book, and is Wheel of Time. Is that a book also? Do you know that one?
But I don't know anything about it. But that is a book.
Well, here's the only thing you have to know about it. It stars Rosamund Pike. That's all you got to know.
That's true. That's probably right.
That's it right there. Rosamund Pike. That's all you got to know, right?
So the only thing I'll say about which... Oh, keep going.
Okay, so answer me this, right? So somebody says to you, right, Perez, you go first. What is Jeet Kune Do? But you're not allowed to say it's Bruce Lee's art, it's Bruce Lee's philosophy, right? You're not even allowed to say it translates to the way of the intercepting fist. But you got to tell them what Jeet Kune Do is.
Freedom. Just research and freedom. To me, it's simplicity. Like everybody says, the simplest answer, the simplest quotes. But
but this is no. That would be letting you off too easy. This is somebody who really, wants to come to an understanding, right, of this martial art form.
Right.
So if you tell them simplicity, freedom, they're going to look at you like, what?
I think for me, it's the best way of understanding yourself through movement.
That's deep.
Yeah. I tell my students all the time, always pay attention to your body through movement. You'll figure out real quick when you're off balance and what you need to do to change. to center yourself and regain that balance. Pay attention to your body while you're moving. So understanding your body through movement. That's
and then they go, well, so it's like ballet.
In a sense, yeah, because it is kind of a dance. I mean,
they hit each other.
Right.
Yeah.
But for me, it's just the easiest way of explaining it to help them understand how to teach them to move. It's like the ABCs. You can't learn a language without learning the ABCs first. How to form words, then how to put those words into sentences, and then how to form those sentences into paragraphs. Everybody has to learn the ABCs to learn a language, but everybody's going to speak differently. It's a unique way of understanding yourself through movement. I think that would be the best way to explain it. Unique to yourself. I think I heard it explained once that you can take 10 people and put them in karate. They're all going to come out learning the same way, fighting the same way. But you put 10 people and put them in Jeet Kune Do, and it's going to be different for each person, because even though they're learning the same curriculum, it's going to be unique to their individuality because of their attributes, their skill levels. Some people have longer arms than others. Some people are better at grappling than others. Some people can kick better than others. It doesn't make them better fighters. It just makes them better according to their attributes and skills. So that's what makes it unique and tailored to the individual, which is another aspect that drew me to it.
Right. Okay, Yusuke, what's your explanation of what is Jeet Kune Do? How do you answer that?
So I have been asked this question before, and what I've tried to say is I use the common denominator analogy. And I really like what you just said, Mike. I think that's a great answer. And in starting off with my answer, it kind of maybe complements yours to not sort of be redundant. But I've been able to answer this question before talking about the common denominator, that Bruce Lee wasn't creating something new, but he was finding the common thread, the common denominators, in all these different arts. So we're learning a number of different systems. Even if you want to say Jeet Kune Do is only one style, we're learning the common denominators that are found in all of these different arts. Like, think about the reality of you can only get hit, evade it, or block it. That's all that can happen. So there was certain observations that the founder was able to make where he could break things down and make complicated stuff simple, right? So that's really, so if I would stop before not to go into the extended definition, but I would say it's the common denominators that we find in all styles, right? Now, of course, when you look at what happened between when Bruce started doing it and when he died, there were certain arts that he did look into, and there's arts that wasn't part of it, right? And that's when we get into the group and what is Jeet Kune Do and what isn't, right? So obviously, random stuff that wasn't in the mix, that wasn't included. So there were certain common denominators. Like, we know boxing was a common denominator. We know fencing was a common denominator, right? But there were certain things in those, like I was just saying, you can either get hit, you can block it, or you can evade it. That's the only realities that can happen from a technique, the only outcomes that can happen from a technique. The 5 ways of attack. Another perfect example. He was able to say, within all techniques that happen, within all things that go on, within every single martial art, the 5 ways of attack that's all you can really do. Everything falls within the 5 ways of attack, right? This was a new truth that we were seeing that transcended every single style. So I think that's one of the real takeaways of what Jeet Kune Do really is. Now, beyond that, we can... Oh, go ahead, please.
There's an interesting aspect to that. And I tried to explain it to somebody the other day, because as aware as we are of this, let's call it creation of Bruce Lee, is called the 5 ways of attack. People seem to forget that he came up with that after the observation of other people's ways of fighting.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
So there are people who seem to think that 5 ways of attack is something that's unique to Jeet Kune Do.
No,
Right.
exactly. He admitted
Right.
he wasn't anything.
Yeah.
He admitted it wasn't anything new.
Yeah.
We don't always talk about that, or we don't always see that quoted. We see other quotes,
Yeah.
but in the Tao, he's like, this isn't really anything new, right? He's like, I'm just being able to sort of boil it down, right?
He was the first person to
Just
group it all together, bring it all
Right.
together.
distill it down to
Yes.
find that truth.
Categorize
That's
everything.
where the philosopher really came out. It said, wait a second, everybody's doing this regardless of what style you're in.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and like HIA was broadened later on because it wasn't just the hand immobilization attack. It could be
Limb
the foot
immobilization.
it could be the body. You could be on the floor and immobilize something a different way with your elbow or body, whatever. So the hand, the HIA is more of a conceptual idea of immobilizing something. It's different than the SDA or the ABC,
Yeah.
right? I mean, you have to kind of know the acronyms, but I figure the audience here was already privy to these.
So
Right.
let's take immobilization attack, right? Why wouldn't it make sense to try to find out how people from all over the world approach immobilization?
It does.
Why wouldn't it
He
make
died in
sense?
73. He died in 1973. He didn't have time. He didn't get there.
You
Right?
can't tell me it was completed.
He didn't get there.
Right. He was constantly researching. I mean, Guru
Right.
Dana said in seminars that on a monthly basis, he was always changing the curriculum. So you can't tell me that his research would have stopped
Exactly.
after that point. He would have
Exactly.
still been continuing to research up to this point. I mean, the day you die is the day you stop learning. So we should be
Yes.
learning
Wasn't
every
there a
day.
page-
We should always be trying to educate ourselves.
Wasn't there pages in the Tao of Jeet Kune Do before they published it? My understanding of the notebooks that they turned into the Tao of Jeet Kune Do, my understanding is there was empty pages where he asked a question. He asked a question, okay, this
Right.
technique, how am I going to counter this? But he passed away before he made
Yeah.
any notes on that page. So it's
A
my
simple
understanding.
question or a
I
word.
could be wrong, right? I could be wrong that the Tao of Jeet Kune Do is actually his unfinished notebooks. That's my understanding.
You can find, at least I'm pretty sure about this. You can find questions in commentaries on the martial way. If you go through that book, you can find parts where it's like, what is my counter to a left stancer's whatever and whatever,
Right.
and then there's nothing under it, but that question is
right.
there, right?
Right.
So let's do a Facebook post from today. So Brooks
Okay.
Long, shout out to him.
Mhm.
Brooks puts up a video of Boxe Française,
Yes.
right? And people go to town, right?
I
And
saw that.
right? So I'm like, whoa. First of all, we're all Jeet Kune Do practitioners. Everybody knows from the pages of the Tao of Jeet Kune Do, page 79, I believe, in the first edition, that Bruce Lee had some kind of interest in Boxe Française.
Mm-hmm.
So many years later, Brooks Long puts up a video. The only thing to do is to go, wow, Brooks, this is a good find. Cool. That's it. That's all you need to do.
Yep. Exactly.
But that's not what happened.
Right.
All the experts came out of the woodwork.
Right?
Yep.
So I was not happy. I was not happy at all. And I had seen various other vintage video of the Boxe Française. And as a matter of fact, we were talking about this just last night, me and my guys, because I found this must be a compilation video from 1984 or so. It's a VHS video of mine. I was in New York with the late Neil Colliff, and we were just copying stuff. So I have this 6-hour VHS video, right? In those days, you had to have been some kind of an insider or on some kind of inside path to get a copy of the 64 or the 67 Long Beach Internationals.
Right.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
You had to have demonstrated to somebody of import that you were somebody who was deserving of access to a copy like
I
that.
never got a copy of that.
Yeah.
I
I'm still
never
waiting
got
on
that.
mine.
Right?
Must have got lost in the mail or something.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
you know, right? So, so I found out just the other day. One of my seniors, Glenn has a VCR. So I'm buying the program. So there's a little connection that you USB to the computer, and you RCA to the VCR, and then you just let it play, because you can't speed it up or anything. You just
Right.
let
All
it
of our
play for all
Panther
6
production
hours.
videos.
Yeah.
You got to
And
convert that to DVD. All of our Panther
Yeah.
production videos have got to go through that process.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I plan to work on that real soon. And when I do, there is a particular Kali demonstration by the Inisano group from the 1980s. Oh man. Wait until I have that digitized. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, so going back to Brooks's post.
Right.
So I see the guy do the sidekick, and I go, well, the only other person I've ever seen do a sidekick like this is Bruce Lee.
The sachet, I think they call it,
Right?
right in Savate?
Okay.
Like la
Yeah.
sachet or something
Le
like
Chassé.
that? Right.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So I put that video up, and I just go, well, here, compare and have at it.
Right. Right.
Because if you can't see, or if you see something that I don't see, I'd like you to explain it to me. But my God, man. I mean, even the way the French guy stamps his foot down and then goes, Bruce Lee
Yes.
does the very same thing.
Right.
You have too many people that are just they're of this mindset that JKD is just boxing, fencing, and Wing Chun. That's it.
But that's
a
not
lot
what
of
he said.
styles.
I know.
But that's not what he
I know.
says in 1971 in Liberate Yourself from Classical Karate. That's not what he says.
Right.
It
And
wasn't
the
it his brother? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
style is not as important as the tool.
Right.
Right.
Right? No, I was just going to say the individual is more important than the style. Right?
I
Always
mean,
learning, always growing, always educating yourself.
yeah. Well,
Did you-
I have I'm sorry. Go ahead, Michael.
I was just going to say, you can't tell me he didn't have any influence. Wasn't it his brother? Who was it? Robert was his brother that did fencing.
Fencing
One
guy.
of his
with
brothers
slaps in
had
the
done
face.
fencing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of his brothers studied fencing, and he got a taste of it from there, which is, where the stop hit come from, intercepting. So you can't tell me he didn't have some sort of influence from that. And people want to sit there and just, they want to rewrite history to fit their explanations, and just
that whole rewriting, where people claim that other people are trying to rewrite history and what have you. I just put up a 1984. Now dig this, right? Dig this. I just put up a 1984 article from Black Belt magazine, and in there's a pictorial between Inisano and Larry Hartzell, and it says a simple direct attack. So I don't understand how he can be accused of rewriting history and renaming stuff if in 1984, in doing an article, he calls it's written as simple direct attack. So where is this history that has been rewritten?
So I may have to offend a few people out there because unfortunately, I didn't want to have to go into this distinction, but we may have to bring it up. And it's nothing personal of anybody out there who may approach some of this as some sort of a more religious, spiritual really religious, a kind of dogmatic religious approach. That it's like a scripture. There's certain things that are in the book, and we have to go back to the scriptures, and you don't need to go forward. You just have to read the scriptures. But if you look at the core philosophy of, we can cherry pick certain philosophies that Bruce Lee talked about, but using no way as the way and no limitation as the limitation, that really is the scientific method, right? And if you look at the process he went through,
Right.
if we're following a similar process, that opens up almost anything to be able to study. And the common denominator suggests that the multi-styling, training in multiple styles, cross-training, isn't merely just adding clay to the statue, because how many boxing punches are there? Once you learn the basics, Panatukan, Thai boxing, Bondo, Tunfan, kickboxing, whatever system it is, you're not really adding any styles anymore. It's all finding those common denominators.
Yeah.
Right? So that's one of the things that I think is a big distinction between the scientific approach and the dogmatic approach. And I hate to call it the dogmatic approach because that is fairly negative, but I understand why people would take more of a spiritual or religious approach to it in seeing Bruce Lee as more of a messiah versus what we do in school. We have tons of teachers, you have tons of different, you can only learn about 5 or 10% from any teacher, so you have to have different teachers.
Yeah.
And when we train in these different styles, you find the common denominators, you have to find your own path. So do we want to recreate the process Bruce went through, or do we want to take the scripture and say, this is the only thing you need and follow that? He did it, just do what he did, and that's it. So I'm sorry that I have to make these distinctions. I'm probably going to offend people because now we're drawing the battle lines, etc. But honestly, I feel like that's why we're going in these circles. In addition to the fact that we're philosophizing in the comment section, and in philosophy, we're going to constantly go through the same...
Go in circles.
Right.
So, but I think there's a scientific method where we follow the process he went through. Not only do we follow Bruce Lee's method while he was alive, but we take the Chinese characters around those arrows, and we really follow that as well.
But
versus the people that say...
That's what we do with the Bible.
Well,
it's almost cultish.
I'm actually an agnostic atheist.
But we do that with the Bible. I mean, those who
to
the
book.
Those who are seriously interested in uncovering the truth of the Bible. It's not just I read it, that's it. No, it's I read it, I think about it, I discuss it with other people. I try to see its relation to the other two religious books that dominate parts of the
various
world.
Translations.
I compare and contrast. I understand the history of it. Aramaic to Greek to Latin to English to whatever.
Absolutely.
Because I am a real student of the Bible. It's not just no, this is it and stop it. So you introduced this, Mike, right?
I did.
Do you remember? Well, you won't remember, so I'll tell you. I did a I Love Jeet Kune Do broadcast about discipleship, and essentially, to boil it down, it talked about being an intimate of Bruce Lee's, and the glorious find in a Ted Wong article, a Ted Wong interview. Ted Wong said that Bruce Lee would come back from Hong Kong and Bruce Lee and Dan Inosanto would get together and Bruce Lee would share his adventures with the two of them. And I thought to myself, that's the two disciples right there. Right? Now, you would think if you read this Ted Wong's own words about the intimate relationship between him, Bruce Lee, and Dan Inosanto, you would shut up.
Right.
you wouldn't have much more to say. Nope. Sorry.
But that's the thing about these types of, when people are so passionate about a belief system, which is basically what this has become, then you want to defend your own beliefs. And actually, a belief is not merely an idea the mind possesses. It's an idea that possesses the mind. So if you really believe something, it's difficult to get sort of outside of that, right? So if someone, and you want to talk about this, this person is sort of the messiah of the real truth, and all you have to do is go back to the scriptures. So we may be blasphemers by saying, I'm going to go outside of all this stuff, and I'm going to do all these different things. I think that I still think that the Chinese characters around the arrows is an argument for cross-training. What happens is we get people that say, I want to take capoeira and hapkido and, Greco-Roman wrestling, and that's just what I like. So that's my own personal Jeet Kune Do. And the straw man argument is that all of us cross-training people are using that same thing.
Right.
Someone says, well, they say that you were adding styles, or many people add styles, but I don't know if all of us that really understand Jeet Kune Do, and I'm not here saying I really understand Jeet Kune Do. I'll defer to people that are more knowledgeable than myself. But I'm not going to add anything to Jeet Kune Do. When I'm cross-training, I'm cross-training. That's very different,
Right.
And I can make the distinctions between it. So, and I don't want to offend anybody because I'm more of an academic. I want to study different languages. I want to study different, it's lifelong learning for me. I don't think that I have everything and I just have to keep doing it over and over. So,
right.
But even
Say
if you are
something.
cross-training, how's that any different than what Cedro Bruce said, that it doesn't matter where it comes from, as long as it works, use it. So what difference does it make if you're cross-training anyways? I mean, it doesn't matter if it's the Korean way of fighting or the Japanese way of fighting, like he said, or the Chinese way of fighting or the Western way of fighting. If it helps you, do it. Who cares where it came from? When you use it, it's yours. It's like language. We're all going to speak differently. We're all going to have a different way of talking, but we still understand each other the same.
Maybe he just meant that in the movies, but not in real life.
Yeah, right.
maybe that was just a lesson for the Chinese servers in the back of the restaurant in Way of the Dragon,
right?
But not
Right.
People who don't cross-train. I think that people who don't want to cross-train, I think they can still find the truth and they can still spar and make it work and say, look, I found my own expression. That doesn't make the cross-trainers wrong. I mean, I want to make that distinction, that just because I'm talking about people that treat it more as a belief system, they can still spar, make it work, and this is all I really want to do. This is my expression. Right. That could be fine as well.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Because none of us are here to say, unlike the way it's sometimes said to us, the way you're doing it is the wrong way. Right? The way you're doing it is your way. Well, more power to you. If that's your approach, that's your approach. No problem.
If that's what works for you, do it. Yeah. Guru Dan likes to say in seminars, the first time I heard it, it really hit me, especially now, I'm 47, that what you used to do in your 20s, you can't do in your 30s. What you used to do in your 30s, you can't do in your 40s. Your body changes every 5 years. So you have to work in accordance with that and adapt with your body. Again, listening to your body, paid attention to your body through movement.
Yeah.
So, it's true. I'm starting to see, an injury that I had over the summer, tore my bicep, throwing a hook into a bag. I didn't properly warm up, had to have surgery, 3 months off of training, 3 months off of work to give it time to recover.
Right.
I can't train like I used to. I don't recover like I used to. I'm not as strong and fast as I used to be. So I have to be careful about how I do things.
Yeah.
Everybody's different.
Yep. I suffer from that a lot. I still think I'm 126 pounds and I don't need to warm up.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you live and learn.
Oh,
you
yeah.
live and learn. Right.
Yeah.
But all of us want to be careful. All of us, I think, want to be careful, especially those of us that cross-train. I think we really do want to be careful to say, we're not training in Jeet Kune Do, we're training in Muay Thai or Filipino martial arts, and whatever particular Filipino martial art it is, or Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, I think we really do pay particular attention to say, this is Jeet Kune Do, this is not, I'm not adding stuff to Jeet Kune Do, this is what happened when Bruce was
Yeah.
alive. I think we really, actually, we want to preserve that just as much as anybody else. We don't want to let that go. I'm willing to learn Cantonese to preserve that, for Christ's sakes. My Mandarin isn't enough. I'll learn other languages, Indonesian, Filipino. I want to preserve it, right? I don't want to mix it up and get it wrong, you know?
Yeah.
Right.
But this idea that if you cross-train, you are automatically adding, that's one idea, one incorrect idea for some of us. But another incorrect idea is that when I cross-train, that is somehow separate from Jeet Kune Do. Because, and let me explain what I mean. A reason for cross-training is to arrive at a point of understanding which is informed by your Jeet Kune Do training. You see? So why cross-train in Muay Thai and Kali? Well, it's because I go into those arts with a Jeet Kune Do mentality, with Jeet Kune Do as the guiding principle. So I'm going to jump into that pool and swim around in it for a little bit, and then I'm going to come out and keep what I found personally suitable. Now, if you want to say that that is adding to Jeet Kune Do, well, go ahead. But see, add and accumulate are not necessarily synonyms.
Right.
You see?
Also, when we can put the Thai shorts on and only train in Muay Thai, we can leave everything else behind and just get into their world. It's a very different flavor. Very different flavor to do that versus Bondo guys versus the Filipino boxers. Very different flavor when you're only getting into their world and doing their thing. And then when you come back out, you're like, wait a second, some of these things aren't that different.
Right.
You know, all of us do a split entry, or all of us do this or that. Those are the common denominators again.
Right.
Right. No one art has a monopoly on movement. You know, you find the common denominator throughout them all. It doesn't mean you have to study them all completely, but as long as you understand the common denominator in the movement, then you can understand how they all are connected.
Yeah. Yeah. If it comes your way, you know what? Even if it doesn't come your way, let's say you go in search of it. What the heck is wrong with that? Going in search of something, right? This automatic idea that if you look at something else, you are automatically adding, right? So now you're not. So now it's your daily increase, not your daily decrease.
You're adding to the clay.
I don't know, man. If I read one book about, let's say that The Witcher is a series of 5 books. If I read book number 1, I stop there because I don't want to add to the store of my knowledge about The Witcher series. So I stop at book number 1 because I don't want anybody to accuse me. Somehow I am now going to corrupt the knowledge gained from book 1. You know, by looking into book 2.
Also, if you think about the clay, the adding to the clay, if you think about that sculpture analogy, at what point are we done adding to the initial mound where we start chipping away? So how long do I need to just train? Like, so do I need to train for 2 years and then I start chipping away? You know, so because I kind of feel like it's cyclical. Like I want to train in something and then I have to refine it in sparring. I train in something, refine it in sparring, right? So if at what point are we done with the initial mound that we start chipping away? Because a lot of people, it doesn't. Again, I'm not gonna criticize people, but it seems like I should go through a process of really training in things that are out there, and then start figuring out how to mold that statue instead of starting off being like, okay, I'm going to start chipping away right away.
But let me ask you this, right? Bruce Lee was anti-classicalism when it comes to martial art. So what he was doing, was that an attempt to prepare himself for a more modern approach to self-defense? Is that what he was seeking to do?
I think so. I mean,
okay. So has self-defense changed somewhat in the decades since he passed away?
There were a few systems, like particularly Krav Maga, that only functions in the scientific, that Jeet Kune Do does as well, right? Now, some people will criticize the seminar practitioners where they're getting more into the art and the sport, where we're not really, like you get into what I was talking about, the drill masters, where they're not really sparring, but they're going through like hubud, and they're not really functionalizing it. We're just kind of memorizing it. So some people would say Jeet Kune Do should be only for the street. And when we're doing these drills, like if I know the 1-2 series, right? Catch the jab, parry, return with a combination. 3 punches and 2 kicks. Shoulder roll, return with 3 punches and 2 kicks. Bob and weave, etc., etc. That's not sparring. So I can know the drills so well. And we've seen drills that look really good on Instagram or whatever, where it's this boxing count. The guy knows the drill so well, they can do the focus mitts really fast. But that's not sparring, and it becomes almost like a form. So since Bruce Lee has died, we really have seen certain arts, and it may be a training methodology, where they're functioning in the scientific. And again, I use Krav Maga as an example because they almost exclusively function in that scientific element. There's almost no sport and no art at all, right? So, but we didn't see that before when Bruce was alive, when he was talking about classical arts. And also, I think some of his criticism was some of the old tradition where you have to have only one master. Doesn't matter what style you're in. You can't even switch instructors. You got to stay with that one instructor. So he was going against a lot of these things as well. That's where the person is more important than the style. So I do think that there are some arts or some training methodologies, boxing, wrestling, Krav Maga, aspects of Muay Thai, aspects of Jeet Kune Do, broadly speaking, that do function in the scientific. So I think Bruce did sort of bring that out. And the UFC. I mean, even though Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu with the gis and the soft mats, that's not reality. But they did help with the methodology as well in some cases.
So if you believe that Jeet Kune Do is both art and philosophy, when we apply or follow the philosophy, and we agree that Bruce Lee was preparing for a more modern approach, would we not have to make sure that Jeet Kune Do is relevant to today's approach and what could happen to you today? Or do you stay stuck in pre-73 material?
That's where adaptability comes in. That's where the research comes in. Continued education.
Yeah, I think it's this thing that, you know, Bruce Lee did all the heavy lifting. It's almost like Bruce Lee created the perfect system. Why would Dan Inosanto need to go outside of the perfect system that he got from the greatest martial artist of all time named Bruce Lee? How could he be so disloyal to Bruce Lee by looking beyond? Oh, that's disgusting.
Bruce Lee was the first person to see the limits in all martial arts.
Right.
And
look at the guy, look at Tony Blair. It does all the psychology stuff. You know, you look at the book, The Gift of Fear by Gavin de Becker, where you're really dealing with the psychology. So Bruce probably got into some of that, and we see some of it, but there isn't chapters on the pre-fight psychology, right? The predator and the prey, right? You setting up this stuff. And so we need to go out and look at these different people that did the stuff for law enforcement or for military or for whatever. You can't have only one teacher, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, can't you just go, you know, I really admire Bruce Lee and how intelligent he was and how scientific his approach was and what have you. Yeah. but I'm not going to do it myself.
Right.
I'm not going to follow his example. I'm just going to praise his example, you know, and tell the world how cool he was. But I ain't going to try to be cool myself.
Yeah.
That's the product versus the process. So if he did create a product, then all we have to do is skip to the back and see what the end result was. But I do think we have to go through the process ourselves. Even if he went through the process and we can see it, we still have to go through the process ourselves.
Well, didn't he do it so that he would have the personal experience of it?
Right.
So don't we have to follow that in order to have the personal experience too?
Right. We can't stand on his shoulders. We have to. We have to make the climb ourselves.
Okay. So I want to finish up with this. Have either of you ever dared to criticize some of the self-defense sequences in the Fight and Method book?
I haven't gone back to them that much. That's a really good question. I haven't actually gone back to them that much because learning out of a book, once we had videos and DVDs and actual instructors, I kind of didn't always go back to the books in the same way. So that's a really good question.
Okay, so here's what you should do. You should look at two things. His approach to dealing with somebody who pulls a knife on you, and his approach to somebody trying to tackle you. Right? Because I think we were talking about this last night too, and I thought I'm either gonna do it as a post or I'm gonna turn it into a broadcast. I'm not sure yet, but to me, long story short, and we'll end this here. It's an indicator that he got to a particular point with the technology and understanding of his era. And we can't ask him to do more than that, right? That's all that could be expected. So, right? Okay. Lopez Perez, famous last words, and we'll wrap this up.
Continue to learn, continue to grow. I mean, that's all I can say. I mean, we're growing every day, so we should always continue to learn and continue to grow.
All right, Yuski, in 20 words or less.
Oh, this is gonna be hard for him.
I know, right?
Well, I am humbled and honored to be among you guys and all of the viewers here in the group. And my journey is only just beginning again. So thank everybody for allowing me to join you guys.
Yes, I have to say, this is a huge honor. I mean, to be a part of this community of martial artists that I've idolized growing up, this is just amazing. I mean, I'm humbled as well and truly honored. This is great. Well, yes, thank you.
I really enjoy the interactions, you know, because I use Facebook as an informational and educational tool. Like I look at who is commenting and how they're commenting, what they're saying, and then that informs me as to the kind of character, because I don't think you can hide that character real well, you know, based on how people post. So I want to thank you guys for carving out some time for me this evening, and
thank you for having us.
Thanks both of you guys.
All right. Okay. All right. Have a great weekend.
You too as well.
Everybody. Okay. Take it easy.
Yep. Same to you. Thank you.
All right. I have no idea what number episode that was. Let me see if I can pull it up quickly here. I know it's 200 and something, but like I said, I didn't like make notes to have particular questions and what have you. You know, this is my wannabe Joe Rogan fantasy. So Joe Rogan says that he doesn't prepare or he doesn't make notes or whatever, right? Okay, so that was episode 206, right? So thanks to Mike Yuski and Michael Perez for hanging out with me. Thanks to all you guys who showed up. Next Friday is the 14th, and I'm going to be on with Juan Perez of Combatives Unlimited. I can tell you that for sure. So hopefully I'll see some of you guys back here then. Before that, next Wednesday will be another issue of the I Love Jeet Kune Do broadcast. Follow me on Twitter at Dwight Woods and on Instagram at Dwight D. Woods. If you were catching the simulcast, please be sure to like, subscribe, comment, and hit the notification bell and all that good stuff. If you want to support the program, please visit jkdrebel.com, and that's where you'll see stuff. Click the Rebel Gear link, and you'll see stuff like this, the 4 tenets of Jeet Kune Do t-shirt, long sleeve, short sleeve, coffee mug, all that good stuff, right? And that's it. Until the next episode, you guys take care, be safe. I hope Omicron's not wrecking your existence, and we'll talk soon. Take care, guys.